Welcome back to Switched to Linux. Well, today we want to have a brief look at NixOS, and I do mean really brief. If you are unaware of NixOS, it is a very interesting enigma in the Linux world that can even move outside of the Linux world. And so this is not a full comprehensive video. It's to whet your appetite to learn more about it and ask if it is something that would beg your time to look into. It's not a basic Linux distribution you're going to install like any other Linux distribution out there and then have this easy to use system. There's a lot more to it, and it does require you to do things a little bit different. However, it also carries with it so much security and so much containerization and the ability to easily port one system over to multiple computers that it is in and of itself a very fascinating thing. In fact, Nix has two functions. The first is you can use it as a full Linux operating system. However, it also can be used as a package manager on Windows through the subsystem for Linux, and you can actually use it as a package manager on Mac OS as an alternative, even alongside Homebrew. And the way it does this is every package, kind of like a snap or a flatpak, is all containerized within all dependencies. And so you can build a single system, which every package you can even define kernel variables for individual packages so you can fully customize the system. You can easily port it because all of the changes are inside of a single configuration file. It's kind of like if you've ever used LaTeX for doing any form of documentation. One file at the very top of LaTeX formats the entire document. And that's really the way that Nix works. So you can actually, there is a Raspberry Pi build which works for a variety of ARM processors. There is going to be a build for just doing a standalone. There's builds specifically for virtual machines. I just grabbed the standard build, which you can put anywhere. I'm running it on GNOME boxes. And even the installation of it, using it as a Linux system, is very nice because you first get started in and it has almost a Fedora-like feel. You first get started in, and the first thing it's going to ask you is, do you want to be able to use the system with only free and open source software, or do you want to enable the non-free repositories? With the warnings that non-free repositories may work better on some hardware, but has some things that are could be proprietary. So that is one of the first choices. Next, I had the choice of which desktop environment to install. On my build, I went with GNOME just because that's one of their basic builds. They have a basic build out of GNOME and a basic build out of KDE Plasma, which are their two live builds for a basic computer. And then there was Cinnamon, XFCE. I don't remember all the desktops. You'll see that here on the screen with the installation portion. And then you let the thing go and do its install. Everything else is pretty normal. The big downside I did not like about the installer is it forces you to use a long, complex password. I don't like it when a Linux distribution forces me to do that because many times I might be doing this, like I'm doing this as a test on an already encrypted computer. I do not need it to force me to use some long, complicated password which actually interferes with my ability. I could get in there and just change the user passwords, I'm sure. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and run with that. Now, once you have the entire system set up, Nix is one of what is called the immutable Linux operating systems, which means all of the core files cannot be changed. It is written and everything is mounted in a read-only system. This does propose problems for someone like myself as a web developer where I might need to bounce between different servers with the host file. Yeah, you can't edit the host file. But you can actually modify the host file through the Nix configuration file. Aha! So there is still the option, albeit it is a little bit weird and out there. And that is why this is not and cannot be a comprehensive video. The Nix configuration guide is so large and so expansive, and it's something that I am just spent a few days looking at it, and it's so large. But it is also so fascinating, which is why this is one of those distros that some people have been talking about, saying, this is actually kind of where it's going, because you can use it to install a variety of applications. Now, in one of the comments to my videos, somebody said they use NixOS has way more packages than anything. That is not true. There's a lot of packages it is missing. However, you can enable Flatpak support, which does take extra steps. Because of the way Flatpak works, guess what? It's a configuration change you make in the configuration file for the operating system. I did not check. I'm sure it can probably use snaps as well for the same reason. I didn't check on that, but I'm pretty sure that would probably be the case. And so really it is a good all-contained system. It does have a number of packages. I did not find absolutely everything I might want to tinker around with, but with the addition of Flatpak, it does actually have all of those applications. And overall, it just is an interesting system. So let's go ahead and have a look at that computer right behind me there, and we're going to walk through some of the things that you're going to find on NixOS. So here we are landing on the desktop here of NixOS. And again, I went with the GNOME build. Pardon the little bar up there from GNOME boxes. But when we get into here, and all we're seeing right here is just the basic GNOME layout. We do have two web browsers. This is the GNOME browser, although the default is set to be Firefox. And I did install a few extra packages. I installed Thunderbird, I installed Element as a Flatpak, and I installed all of the LibreOffice suite. The Flatpak brought the software store with it. That was not installed by default here on GNOME. And that's just basically just to give you the layout. Why did I do the other things? Because this is a completely different operating system, and I had to figure out a number of different things. Some things I had to get online and just do a little bit of searching, and some things were pretty obvious after reading through it. Of course, we have the manual here. This is where you're going to want to go to see how you're going to do different things. And what we actually want to be focused on here, just to show you how this is so different, is we talked about that configuration file. And the configuration file here is going to be right here at etc nixos configuration.nix. So we're just going to access that with our file here. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to use Nano. I'm not sure if Vim or Vi or whatever else is installed. So this is actually the configuration file. And one thing that I did actually find is when I installed Thunderbird, it actually did something that gave a brief error in the system. Or maybe I just wasn't running the rebuild test as sudo initially, which looked like an error. So keep in mind, you do need to make sure you do that. But I thought it was actually what I was trying to do, which was editing the host file. But then I went ahead and did the where's the error, and it actually is right here, which is what was added by the system. This down here, the networking extra hosts, this is actually how I'm managing the hosts file. You can see I added Google to it. Why Google? It was just the first thing I thought of that I could test that I know is not blocked on my global firewall, because obviously my global firewall's in there. So of course, let's just have a look at etc and hosts. And when you make that change, it actually adds those directly to this. Even if I were to come in here, you'll see at the bottom of the screen that says this is unwritable. Well, even if I do sudo nano etc hosts, you'll see it says down here at the bottom, it's meant to be read-only. And I cannot make any changes, even though I am in here as sudo. And so what you see is that the configuration file is where you do all of those changes. And then you can take this configuration file and drop it onto any other Nix build, and everything in here is just going to be ported over. You see your time zones are set. You can see our layout is set for our display managers. Here you can see that we're using the GNOME desktop environment. So we have GDM enabled. And it looks like we do have printing services. Cups is enabled there. Of course, if I wanted to completely disable printing, I could just do false. And it's going to just get rid of the printing options. Pipewire is what we are using, is set up. Now, the other thing is inside of your users, you can actually install software explicit to users in that configuration. So if you have users that are administrators, you can set those up to be different than anybody else. The other thing that I did is services flatpak enable equals true. You have to set this to use Flatpak. Even if you install the Flatpak application, you still cannot use Flatpak until you set this, because Flatpak requires you to write in places that NixOS by default is not going to allow you to write. So sure, let's go ahead and save that. And then anytime you make any change, you need to do a NixOS rebuild. Now there's a few options for this. Switch is going to it's going to redeploy the configuration and change your current build without having to reboot the system. It's going to change your current build to be using that. You can do the test. So if I do test, then what this is going to do is it's going to rebuild it for this session. But when I reboot, it is not going to rebuild those changes into the system. So that way, if I do something and it messes it all up, then that's whatever the case. If I do boot, then it will make the change on the next time the system is rebooted, but it will not deploy those changes right now. And then, of course, we can combine things. So we can do a switch, and a test is going to test it to make sure. What we're going to do here is, let me just run switch, and that's going to get rid of the print services, basically, is all we basically did. There's some information here about automatic updates. Things like that are going to be done inside the system. Well, that's waiting. Oh, you'll notice we are going to get an error because I did not do that as sudo. So we'll just wait for that to happen. Here's one of the things while we're waiting for this to happen. I will tell you, this system it feels to me a lot slower than many other systems. You can see these are those unable to download information. I'm unable to download that stuff. That might just be I have a really bad internet where I'm at right now. Let me double check that. Yeah, we have no internet right now, so I can't even download anything. Let's go ahead and not worry about making any changes to the system right this second, because right now my internet died and I can't download anything. The next thing you need to be aware of is package management, which actually this is not the most helpful right here. It is giving you, not for the basic stuff, this is giving you how to do environment systems. But in order to run your actual installing software, you need this Nix environment one. So NIX-ENV. Now, I is going to be install. IA is going to install it for all users. And then you have a few other options out there as well. I'm going to have to go back through my history even the documentation is not that useful. All right. QA capital P is what's going to search for applications. And so it is slow. Now, right now, it looks like my internet did come back. Even with good internet, I was actually testing this out before I was in a place with bad internet. It takes a long time to search for stuff like this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to let that do its own thing. But over here, if you do, I believe it is search.nix.org, I believe it is. Maybe not. Hold on. So you can see there, it finally spit out our things. Let's do, it's search.nixos.org, I think. That's it. This gives you a good place where you can actually search for any packages. So if you're wanting to see is Thunderbird in this system, you can go ahead and just search for Thunderbird. I found that this actually is a little bit faster than using this. But here we can see all the different packages that we have, everything that might be related to it as well. So I looked up Natron, which is a package I'm trying to learn how to use right now. You can see that's in there. Although when I tried to install it, it is unstable right now, so it will not let you install it without some extra parameters. the Element client that we're using for the Matrix channel, you cannot install this from there. Sadly, Element is a periodic table, and there's nothing in here that is that client. So that one is where I happen to install that through a Flatpak. You'll notice that Element here is installed, and it should in theory work. I did not sign in with it, but it gives all appearances of working. And this is simply installed as a Flatpak. So I enable the Flatpaks, enable the Flatpak support, and things like that. So you can go on over to search.nixos.org and search for any packages that you want if you want to know the packages, the details, and see extra information, their sources and things. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can get. The website does have a ton of information. It's just some of it is a little bit overwhelming, and some of it doesn't have all the things. Like I had to do an internet search to find out how to search for packages in the terminal. That's not actually over here, at least that I found. You can roll back packages looking at different versions. I'll let you read about all of that. And then there's just a lot of extra things inside the configuration. Nearly everything is done in the terminal with managing this configuration file or utilizing the package manager, but it will have some extra specific things. You'll see there's some Nextcloud configuration settings, Jitsi Meet configuration settings. There's some Matrix over there. So you'll see that there's so much inside of this that really makes this a really interesting thing to look at. And so if you head on over to their main website, which is nixos.org, you're going to find all of the download links, and you'll find information if my internet works. And my internet died again, so we can't show you that right this second. But when you go to the download page on the NixOS website, what you're going to actually find is you're going to find when you go to the download page, the upper half of the page, as the time I'm recording the video, talks about the package manager, and the other part, the lower part of the page, is actually the downloads. Obviously, the downloads is if you wanted to run it on as a Linux system, as I'm running it here. The package manager gives you information on installing it on a Mac OS, Windows subset for Linux, or other things. There's also EC2 clouds, there's Docker builds for it, all sorts of things like that. So really, the service here, it is a really, really fascinating system. Now, where's all this working? What it actually is going to do is it's going to, inside of here, we have a separate folder inside here called Nix and Store, and this is actually where all of your package information is going to be. What we did notice, though, maybe this is a downside, just trying to update the configuration on something simple like, hey, we're just going to go ahead and remove the print services. It's tried to download a bunch of stuff from the internet, and that makes me ponder a couple things. So that's possibly a downside. If you're looking for an offline system, this is not going to be it. I don't even know how much bandwidth this is polling using things like this. It's not something I've been monitoring as I've been playing with it. I probably should have. But with every single package, kind of like a Flatpak or a Snap, with every single package having all the dependencies with it, you imagine it's going to be a lot heftier on the downloads compared to other systems out there. And so you can see this first folder here. This is everything relating to running the Thunderbird application, which I installed through the repository. So everything should be stored in over here. And so the other point we'll make about this is that, yeah, this is going to probably take a lot more system resources compared to other things you might be looking at using. But that being said, overall as a system, it works really well. In fact, with a Raspberry Pi build, I might play around with this on the Raspberry Pi to see how well and how viable of a system it works. This is, I just dropped some photos into my just my basic user folder. So your user folder is going to work just like you would expect a user folder to work. These photos I just grabbed from my Nextcloud instance and just dropped into pictures. Never opened this application up before. There's my geek wall when I still had a sticks and bricks. And then let's see. Here's the kitties in the front of the van there. There you go. And here's Jabba the cat before I edit him into Jabba the Hutt's pedestal there. And a very fascinating warning that I once received on Audacity. It was just too funny not to keep. Don't show this warning again. Okay, then. Whatever. Okay, Audacity. So there is my brief look at NixOS. Hopefully you like this. Hopefully it whets your appetite to look into what else this system can do, because it does look very interesting, very compelling. And I think moving into these mutable operating systems can be a benefit in many instances. So that's something to keep an eye on. And we're going to be having a look at NixOS quite a bit more in the future, just to see. Let's just have a brief look at the resources right now. So, of course, this is running on a Ryzen 5, I think it's a 55U processor, 5500U processor, I think. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. It's too late at night. It is a Ryzen 5 processor in a laptop, so 8 processing cores. This is running 1 gigabyte of memory right now. And here's your basic processes that are running. So everything over there looks good. Here's your basic file systems. And then as far as the kernel, I believe you can make some adjustments to the Linux kernel. That's not what I wanted. There you go. Well, that's what I wanted. I don't even know if uname is going to work. Let's give it a try, shall we? Hey, look at that. We're running for 5.15 kernel. So not the newest kernel out there, but it is certainly a... not an old system either. So completely independent Linux operating system built with the immutability and with the containerization in mind, making sure that you can duplicate this on any and every device that you happen to put it over. In theory, you can copy that Nix folder and just drop that onto something else, adjust your configuration file, and you're set to go. So that's kind of how the system is designed to work. But with that, hopefully this has been an interesting operating system for you to have a look at. So hopefully this video just gave you a little bit of information about NixOS, how it works, how complicated it can be in a way. And this is not the Linux distribution you should start with. This is a very good distribution for the security model it tries to be, for the portability, for the ability to cross-deploy it across a lot of systems. But what it is not is a easy-to-use system for a new Linux user. But if you're looking for something a little bit more secure or a little bit more of a challenge, something like that, this is going to be a system you might want to have a look at. So thanks for watching, everybody. And have a look over the website, switchedtolinux.com, all the ways to help support the channel and the live shows and other stuff that we have. You'll find that information over there on that website at switchedtolinux.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.